The SWAC Media Day participants have been announced, and the lack of quarterbacks highlights the conference's question marks at that position. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current site expert at Who Dat Dish and contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Now, use Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get 50% off your first year. We'll wrap up today's episode by taking a look at Jamarion Stubbs' decision to transfer from Alabama State to Arkansas and what could have went into that decision. Segment 2 is about the real strategic plan that North Carolina Central has, not only for the men's basketball team, but also for the women's basketball team. But we're going to spend a little bit more of a focal point or a little bit more of a focus on the point of the men's team. In segment 1, I want to kick this off with something I believe we've always known. It's something that we talk about frequently. Quarterback play isn't the greatest in the SWAC and the MEAC. It just isn't. Like, I think we have some guys who are impressive. You have a Davius Richard. You have a Jeremy Musa, you have a Daniel Richardson, you have a Shador Sanders, you have a Eric Phoenix, right? Like you have an Andrew Body, like, and I know we'll get to Body in a little bit, and I feel like I'm probably higher on than others. I'll just give you a little bit of preview anyway. I'll be out, so I'm about to pre-record another episode later on today. We will be talking more heavily about Alabama State and Andrew Body on Friday's episode because I think that's an underrated topic. But let's stay on the matter at hand, even though Body is kind of related here. The SWAC Media Day only invited 3 quarterbacks. And let me make sure I'm clear on what I mean when I say invited. I should say participants like I did earlier. There's only going to be 3 quarterbacks who are participating in SWAC Media Day. Now, for me, that sets off alarms. For me, that's a red flag. For me, that's something that immediately is going to catch my attention because the way that if I were a coach, would approach media day is I would try to get my quarterback there unless I have a superstar on the offensive side of the ball. There's a school, I can't remember which one it is. For some reason, I think it's UAPB, but there's a school that brought the kicker. No disrespect to the kicker. We don't really want to hear from the kicker. I don't think that a kicker or a punter should be one of your 2 representatives that you send into SWAC Media Day. When I'm looking at conference media days, I'm looking at a star player on each side of the ball or my quarterback. On the defensive side, it really doesn't matter. It could be defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, corner, safety. I don't think that there's anything that just screams you have to have that position. Even though defensive end and cornerback are premier positions, they don't need that. Linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. Middle linebacker is the quarterback of the defense. You don't need that. Like, those aren't players that I feel like have to be there. But your quarterback is different. Your quarterback is the most important player on your team. Now, if I have Jada Byers at running back, I'm bringing Jada Byers. I don't care who my quarterback is, right? But the fact that only 3 SWAC schools are bringing their quarterback to media day tells me everything I need to know. There's question marks around that position all around the conference. I've already laid out the importance and why I would bring my quarterback. They're my spokesperson. They're the face of my team. No matter what you say, unless you have a superstar, right? And there's probably only a handful of those around the league. A superstar who can take over the shine for your quarterback, that's the face of your team, okay? Jacobian Morgan out of Jackson State, KJ Cooper out of Texas Southern, and then Cornelius Brown Jr. out of Alabama A&M. We'll break down all three of those. But the fact that you have 12 teams and you only have 3, that tells me that the majority of your conference isn't confident about their quarterback play. And you look around it. Think to yourself right now, who is the school outside of the ones that I named, and I'm not so certain about Alabama A&M, but outside of the ones that I named, think about this. Take Jackson State, Texas Southern, Alabama A&M off the board, regardless of how you feel about their picks. Who's the other schools that you feel confident about their quarterback play? Oh, yeah, that's the guy. Not I think it could be him or it could be him. Who is the guy at their school? And you feel great about it. I thought about this for a second. I didn't want to think too hard because I wouldn't ask you to think too hard, but I couldn't think of it. Not off the top of my head. Southern's a school that brings it close because they had a guy in spring ball. Oh, that's our guy. We're rocking with Woods. Okay, cool. Then you bring in Cam McCoy, which I agree with. I want to be very clear. I'm very pro Southern bringing in Cam McCoy. I think he's an extremely talented quarterback. I think that he has a lot of upside. He's young. I like the style. And I wasn't sitting here sold on rocking with Woods. I wasn't. I was not here solid, or I was not here feeling solid about rocking with a quarterback who hasn't played a lot of football. Let me have a competition. And question marks can be competition. Question marks doesn't have to mean untalented. Just because 9 teams chose to not bring their quarterback does not mean that 9 teams feel terrible about their quarterback situation. Look at Florida A&M, which G. Thomas dropped a phenomenal article on Tallahassee Democrat about this. So you got to check that out. Tallahassee Democrat had a breakdown of every single one of the boatload. There's 7 of them, but a boatload of FAMU quarterbacks and what they did last year, their measurements, things of that nature. I thought it was a great way to take a big topic and condense it to just give you a snapshot of each guy. So shout out to G, shout out to the Tallahassee Democrat. You should go check that out. But FAMU, they probably feel good about their 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks that they're going to have. They don't know which one is going to be. So why would they send them? Like, why would you send one of those guys if you don't know who is going to be yet? Which kind of brings me to Alabama A&M. Oh, also, sorry, it's a little scatterbrain. Andrew Body, who I mentioned already, I do feel like is going to be the Alabama State quarterback, and he's already been through this process before. I probably would have invited him. Just because he knows exactly how this works. He's done it at Texas Southern. I think he may have done it his first year at Alabama State. Don't quote me, but he's done it at Texas Southern. So he's very familiar with how the role of going through media day, being a representative of the school goes. You don't have to worry about him when the mic is in front of him, that he's going to either freeze up or say the wrong thing. He's well trained in this. I would have brought Andrew Body here, even if it's a 50-50 shot of him being my starting quarterback. The reason I bring that up, Cornelius Brown Jr. I don't think he's going to be the starting quarterback for Alabama A&M. Though I'm not surprised that the majority of teams didn't invite their quarterback, I am kind of surprised that Alabama A&M invited this quarterback. If it would have been any QB to come from the Bulldogs, I would have thought it'd be Mekhi Haggins. Because to me, Mekhi Haggins, who was starting at UAPB last year, did not decide to go to Alabama A&M to be anything less than a starter. So he is the starting quarterback. We can talk about battles here, battles there. It is his job to lose. The fact that they're bringing Cornelius Brown tells me there is still a battle going on. But to be very clear, it is Haggins's to lose. And that stance to me makes it even more surprising that you bring in a guy like Cornelius Brown Jr. Why is he representing your team? He's more than likely going to be a backup. Backups are not representatives. Just be real with you. Like, I don't think that media day, the national broadcast of media day, does a lot for you. I think that it's cool to talk about, and we will talk about it. Don't get me wrong. We will discuss it. But at the same time, it's not going to give you a lot. At least give me the star players. You want to ask about that. So that's me. That's me, though. If you're handing over the reins immediately, this doesn't make sense. This does not track. But if you're going to have a battle for QB1, then okay, you can bring Cornelius Brown Jr. You can do that if you wanted to. But I would have brought Mekhi Haggins. I'm just going to be honest with you. I would have brought Haggins into the fold because he's my starter. But These are assumptions. I want to be very clear. I'm assuming that Hagans is going to be the starter. Maybe they've seen a little bit of both and they said, we feel good about Brown. This is a 50-50 competition. We didn't expect Brown to be this. Maybe, right? Maybe these other schools just don't have the same ideology as I do as far as bringing your quarterback. Maybe it's not an indication that they don't feel great about their QB. To me, I'm bringing my quarterback unless I don't know who my quarterback is or unless I have a star, right? If I have a star wide receiver, I'm bringing my star wide receiver. For example, Javonte Gibson and Mekhi Hagans won UAPB last year. If they would have stayed, there's a good chance I would have brought Gibson because he was an All-American-esque player, right? That doesn't mean that Hagans isn't a good quarterback. Doesn't mean that I'm not secure in my QB position, but I would have brought my superstar with me. As for the other two, Jacobian Morgan is the most sure thing on here. If you were ever going to question who may or may not be here, Jacobian Morgan was going to be the representative for Jackson State. Irv Mulligan is gone. I think that if there was a conversation, it would have been if Mulligan was still around. But Mulligan isn't. So of course Morgan is going to come in. He's the guy who you feel good about going into the season. Morgan did well for Jackson State. Jackson State is coming off of a Celebration Bowl victory. I would have been actually shocked if anybody other than Jacobian Morgan was going to be the offensive representative, because it's two for each team. One offense, well, I guess it doesn't have to be offense and defense, but it tends to be offense and defense. Sometimes you can have a special teamer. And then lastly, KJ Cooper, who I'm excited about. If this means that Texas Southern knows who their quarterback is going to be, I'm excited because what I saw from KJ Cooper in the first game of the season against Prairie View A&M, I know it was a long time ago, but I was really impressed. And we didn't get to see much of him after that. I think he had an injury, and I don't know if the injury kept him out or if Coach Dishman just went with Jace Wilson after seeing him for a little bit. I'm not sure. But what I will say is I liked what I saw from KJ Cooper in that first game. I thought that he looked efficient. I thought he looked decisive. I thought that he was athletic. I saw a lot of traits that I wanted to see more of. And I understand that if I'm not mistaken, I think the weather was bad, so you couldn't throw the ball all around. But he definitely did something. He showed arm potential. I'm excited. If this means that he is the starting quarterback and I have to reach out, same with Danny Green at running back. I just feel like I saw a lot of good things from TSU players, individuals from TSU, and then I just didn't see him again. I like the Cooper Green combination. If we can lean into that into 2025, okay, might be a nice little 1-2 punch at a quarterback running back. A nice little pairing, I should say. So these are the guys, man. These are the guys. I can't say that is end of discussion on Cooper. I do not believe that it's the end of the discussion on Brown. I know it's the end of the discussion on Morgan. So you look at 3 quarterbacks brought in, one sure thing, one I just can't get a read on, and then another that we know is in the midst of a competition. So Alabama A&M and Sam Shea clearly have a different perspective on the invitees than I do. But let's push forward, looking at the strategic plan of North Carolina Central and how they're approaching money games in basketball. We don't talk about that enough, but we will today as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, but have you tried them? Maybe you have. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. We need both of those, right? Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. Average 15 minutes. You're ready to go. Last for 36 hours, so you can stay ready to go. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made that switch, and you could be the next in that number. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off your first order. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. We're moving past the NBA. We're moving past college baseball. We're all in the pro baseball era right now. This is that time of the sports calendar. Make sure you're checking out Locked On MLB so that you can stay up to date on the sports calendar's only main attraction. ACC money games, Big 12 money, no, Big 10 money games, and SEC money games. North Carolina Central has found a way to leverage the combination of those three to maximize their financial return. We often talk about money games under the lens of football because that is the biggest attraction in college sports. It's the biggest attraction in HBCU sports. It's the biggest attraction at most of our HBCUs. I can't say all, but for most. I went to a school that was heavy in basketball. They were great in basketball. But I would still say the investment, the care, was placed more on football than it was on basketball, despite the fact that we had a wildly successful basketball team and a wildly tragic football team. At the same time, people still seemed a little bit more excited for football, cared a little bit more for football. Now, that PV game, but neither here nor there. We're talking about North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central has maximized their return on money games by scheduling local. Everybody doesn't have this opportunity, admittedly. You look at TSU. Yes, they could go play a TCU. They could play a UH, but the options are limited. Texas is such a big state that a lot of these schools are spread out. Are you going to go to UT in Austin? Are you going to drive? Like, I don't know. It's a little bit different. But when you look at North Carolina Central, they're right there. Triad, Research Triangle. Like, you have a great area where you have Duke, you have North Carolina, Chapel Hill, right? North Carolina. You have Wake Forest, you have NC State. You have 4 schools that are big schools, ACC schools, right there in arm's reach. You don't even have to fully extend to get to NC State. You don't have to fully extend to get to Duke. They're right there. You can drive right up the road. Like, it's enough to where I could drive to Duke and come back in the same day and be like, okay, I got a class in 2 hours. I'm going to slide real quick over here and then come back. It's that simple. That's how close they are. So you look at what the Eagles are doing in 2025, they're scheduling local opponents. And they made that jump from $325,000 in guarantees to $670,000 in guarantees. That doesn't count for the savings in travel. That's $80,000. So now your expenses have gone down and your revenue has gone up. I mean, listen, I didn't major in business. That's not what I did. But last time I checked, if I can make more money and spend less money, I'm getting more money. That feels like a sound business plan to me. Sounds like a sound business plan to me. If you got your MBA in business administration and you feel differently, please let me know, right? But to me, that is a smart plan by North Carolina Central. And let's see exactly how they were able to pull that off. So the men's team, that's the men's team from 325 to 670. The women's team, we don't have the guaranteed revenue, but we will talk about the savings, which that's the 80,000 for both teams. North Carolina Central's men team, they're playing North Carolina, 19 minutes away. NC State, 23 minutes away. Virginia, 3 hours and 20 minutes away. Kentucky and Penn State, 7 hours. We're flying to them, right? We're flying to Kentucky. That's not a question. Okay, cool. You're going to have to catch flights for those. You could, I don't know if you will, but you could drive 3 hours to Virginia. You could. I'm not saying that it's smart. I'm not saying that it's comfortable. I'm not saying that it will happen, but it's doable. 7 hours, it ain't happening. 23, you're driving. North Carolina, 19 minutes away, you're driving. You don't have to worry about catching a plane, and that saves money. But it's not just the men's team that's doing this. It's also the women's team. The women's team is actually doing it at a greater degree. We're talking about the big schools when it comes to the men's, but on the women's side, all of their games are driving distance. I don't think they have a game that's more than an hour away. Like all of their, I think all of their games, except for 1 or 2, are right there. I think Old Dominion, High Point. I think they play Wake Forest. Yeah, they play Wake Forest. So, like, you have a bunch of arm length schools. But let's just focus on it broadly. We talk about money gains. We talk about how much you're getting. But how about maximizing how much you're able to keep? Because you have to pay to get out there. You get paid more. And next to a home and home, this is probably the best thing you could do. Once again, everybody doesn't have the luxury of it. Everybody does not have the luxury of this. And a home and home may not even work as well with a school that's local, because I'm looking at the injection of money into the local economy more than I'm even looking at the injection of money into the school. So maybe I'm a little bit too bird's eye there. Maybe I'm a little bit too wide in my view of prioritizing the city's economy versus the flow of money into the school when talking about a home and home with a local opponent, though it's also very doable. The thing about this is, if I'm going to North Carolina, I'm going to NC State, I'm still getting a check. I'm still getting a check, and I'm not having to spend as much. I'm assuming the check's a little bit less if they come to you, but you're going on the road. They don't have to come to your home arena. Nice check, nice savings. Give me this any day of the week. I think that this has been a very successful plan. And with 4 schools and arm length, you could do this anytime. Aren't right there. Boom. Give me Wake Forest. Boom. Give me Duke. Boom. Give me North Carolina Central. Give me, it's not North Carolina Central, North Carolina State. Let me get UNC. I can do that anytime. And I know we're talking about money gains may kind of lessen and may taper. I think we're going to see more schools prioritize scheduling big schools as well. So high major versus high major, but you're never going to get rid of the warm-up game. And that's how they view it. You're never going to get rid of the money game, which is how we view it. It just isn't happening. So if you're going to continue to do it, this is probably the best way to get it done. Now, as we push forward, speaking of getting it done, Jamarion Stubbs has been getting it done for a while, and now he's trying to get it done in the SEC. Let's break it down as we continue and wrap up today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We've talked about SWAC Media Day. We've talked about the ACC money games that North Carolina Central has strategically planned and should continue to do. Now let's talk about one of our better athletes who is transitioning to the SEC, right? We're leaving the SWAC. We're leaving the SWAC if you're Jamarion Stubbs, All-American sprinter out of Alabama State, and he's going to Arkansas. Now, this is one that I had to call my friend about. My friend ran track in college, and I had to call him because I was just curious. Stubbs has done so much at Alabama State. He's succeeded at such a high level, and we've seen this before. They had a Johnson C. Smith guy who now is transferred up to South Carolina, and I just had to ask, they're having the success at this school, and the numbers are the numbers, so you can be found anywhere, literally. That's the one time I actually think that applies. I hate that you can be found anywhere. If you're there, they'll find you. I hate that phrase. I think it sucks. But in track, it actually applies. I was like, why are they leaving? They've achieved high success here. Why leave? And to my surprise, his reasons had nothing to do with coaching. I even asked him about it. Coaching was never something that he mentioned. The 2 things that stuck out to me the most on why a player would leave is he said, look, it's just like any other sport. NIL, you get paid. That wasn't the only thing, but that was the first thing. Like, the benefits while you're in college are still very high. Does track have the same ceiling as football or basketball when it comes to NIL payouts? No. Right? Like, if you look at the best or the highest track and field NIL versus the highest football NIL, it'll probably pale in comparison. I don't want to be disrespectful and say where it would rank amongst the NFL, but I highly doubt that it is close to the first guy. Number 1 versus number 1, I don't think is that close, because track and field just is not a sport that is invested in as much as football. But even if it's not comparable to football, you put it in its own lane, in its own bubble. You just put it right here. Say, all right, track and field, high major, mid major, D2. You just put it in that category. Well, yeah, Arkansas is going to have more money and is going to pay more money to their track and field guys than Alabama State would. That's a no-brainer, right? And I knew that. I expected that. But I was looking for something a little bit beyond the NIL, and he quickly gave that to me, right? He quickly gave me the reason beyond just NIL. He also speaks about, well, I was also thinking resources, like those type of things, but he expands beyond payment, because it's no longer just, oh, well, he gets money, he gets gear, like beyond that. The competition level is something that we talk about in football, like, oh, you got to prove yourself versus this competition level. No, this competition in track is just going to make you better. I have to ask why. Because me, I'm looking like, man, I could run against you 10 times and I'm never going to be as fast as you. I probably won't catch up to you. That's my thought process. So how is going against these other guys going to improve it? And he gave me a story that hopefully he has no problem sharing. And I doubt he will, because I'm not going to give his name or anything. But he was talking about how in high school, he ran this event a certain way. He got out hard and nobody could really handle that, right? Like the way he got out on the 400, no one could handle. Then he found somebody who could and actually beat him. And they ran against each other a couple of times. They ran against each other and he would beat them. I don't know how many times it happened, but they ran against each other a couple of times. And in the end, like a real protagonist of the story, protagonist of the movie, my friend came out on top when it was all over. But the point is, running against that guy who could handle my friend's strategy made my friend have to realize how to change his strategy, how to approach this event differently. And that's something he says that going from a lower level to a higher level can do. And you look at Arkansas specifically, they have the 4th place runner in the 200 championships this year, and the outdoor championships in the 200 this year. They had the 4th place guy. And if we're talking about going against the SEC competition on a regular basis, as opposed to only facing them in the national championships, the SEC has the top 2 finishers in the 200, which is Stubbs' best event. He runs the 1 and the 2, but his best is the 2. You have that. And then you also have 5 of the 9 finalists in that final heat from the SEC. So if I'm saying running against the best can help you from a strategic standpoint, also, if you're better than everybody else, even if it's not a wide margin, if you're better than everybody else, you may not know what it means to scrape the bottom of the barrel when it comes to your output. When you've given it all you have. Yeah, you're running full speed, but when somebody's better than you, you got to go even deeper. It's about digging deep. And that combined with the idea of strategic planning, I said, I get it. He never once mentioned coaching. Even when I asked about it, he said, you might even take a dip in coaching. But I think it's that competition level and also the cushion lifestyle of being a more paid athlete that makes everything better. Now, as we push forward, on tomorrow's episode, we'll be back to talk about Alabama State. I feel like y'all are not talking about them enough. Let me not even say y'all. We aren't talking about them enough. But I'm going to change that for myself on Friday. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.